Hi, I'm Sandra Brown, and I'm here to demonstrate a type of dyeing, combination dip dyeing and casserole dyeing, that pertains to an article that is appearing in the 2023 spring issue of Rug Hooking magazine. The article talks about how to hook a throated flower, and throated flowers like morning glories, daylilies, any flower that has a kind of a pouty lip, front petal, reaching down into a throat. And this demonstration is about how to dye the wool for throated flowers. It's easier to start with the wool, the colors that you want already on the wool, rather than to try and use 8 value swatches. And here's a couple of examples of the technique that I'm going to show you, which is not only a casserole dyeing, but a dip dyeing as well, using a tilted pan. But what you get are these lovely streaks of color, and you still get the gradation from a nice deep dark color at one end up through streaks of additional colors to a lighter top, which gives you the petal, the shading, the full highlights of the petal and the throat, all in one piece of wool. Here's another example that was done using lilac and soft peach tones. And here's another bright orange piece going into the deep yellows of a daylily. So we start with a pan. I use a double length restaurant style pan over 2 burners, and the wool is 27 by a little over 12 inches wide. It gets cut this direction when we're done with the dyeing. In other words, you're going to be running the wool through the cutter in this direction, so that as you hook, you're pulling up. You can either start at the light end or the dark end. You're gradually pulling up the colors you want. And if you want to pick up some purples or magentas, then you would run this portion here through the cutter where the purple and magenta has been painted onto the wool. So we have this tilted pan here because we have to actually keep all of the dyes at one end. And in this case, I'm using a stainless steel serving spoon to keep it tilted. This part has to be pretty sturdy because you're going to be dealing with a hot pan. And I have taken this wool, which is, as I said, 12 by 27. That's 1/6 of a yard of wool. It's too long for the pan, but that's exactly what I want because I'm pleating it and making little rivulets, making sure it's stacked up on this side to keep this out of the dye and to concentrate on this being in the dye here. I'm going to add a tiny bit of water. Don't want this to be too wet. And then I'm going to start spooning the darkest dye, and in this case it's going to be the blue cornflower, Prochem's cornflower dye. And I can either just pour a nice stream of that onto the wool and then gradually start spooning it up. Whoops. You're going to get these spots. Make them work for you. Take some dyes up. I'm going to make sure this pan is even and that I'm getting this color blue in the main places that I want it. On its own, and if I tipped it a little bit like this, it'll start making the rivulets up of color that are so pretty in the finished piece. and provide an opportunity for a longer stretch of hooking, if that's what you want. Okay, I have the heat on fairly medium, and that's going to start to set the dye. The ProChem dyes set very quickly with heat, so we have to be careful not to get white core, that we give a chance for the dye to actually soak into the wool before we add the vinegar, which is the final way of setting the color, or before we add the heat, so that we don't end up with white core. I use citric acid or vinegar, whichever you have most of, for the final setting or the midway setting. But what starts to happen here is the blue is going to go in, but it stays concentrated at the lower end like this. And the next thing I'm going to add, once this sets a little bit more and the water begins to clear, is the pink magenta that I want, because sometimes there are hints of that in a Morning Glory. But basically I'm trying to streak this up the wool. Turn the spoon on the side so you get those nice streaks. If you did a big clunky bit, you might not get a really nice kind of pointed streak, like right there. So I'm going to correct that. Let that guy go up further. In a previous video on YouTube, I was showing the technique of doing casserole dyeing with a single piece of wool that might have had 4 different colors in 4 different areas. In this case, we're going for a larger piece of wool that is going to provide basically more wool for hooking, and is also going to allow you to add more color in different ways. Okay, so here we have the blue. It's already been mostly taken up. This is a mixed dye, and it has a little bit of red in it already. As you can see, the purple is left behind. But I'm going to do the streaking now that I want to get at least on one portion of this for my Morning Glories. And I've got red ProChem magenta 338, and I'm going to start bringing that up and blending it in. I can always pour a little water over it to dilute it back down into the base. So I'm grabbing the blue purple from the bottom, bringing it up, making streaks that I can then pull out in my cutting and hooking to take care of the magenta star, for instance, on a Morning Glory. If I was doing this with deep yellow wool that I had pre-dyed, and then doing a deep orange red on this end, I might be streaking with more gold or brown. There would be areas where I might even streak some chartreuse yellow in here. So this is where you start to have more fun with the playing around with your colors and the kind of customizing of things to get the choices that you want to be able to do the flower. And there's nothing like color choices to make hooking fun. The more choice, the better. Now, if I were to try and dip dye this, all of the red that I have been putting up here, really nice and clear, would affect the color of the blue down here. And I kind of want the blue to stay true. So I have to do this combination of kind of a dip and casserole, because first, basically, it's essentially dipped in the blue, and then I am feathering in another color on top of that, above it, not over it, although some of it, of course, is streaking down and seeping down into the blue area. But this will be, this gives you more control over the wool and the choices that you have when you want to hook the piece. So I'm going to leave this down here without any red. I'm going to darken this bit just a tiny bit on the bottom edge, because of course when it dyes, when the wool when it dries, it will be at least 2 shades lighter than it is wet. So I want a really dark edge on this bottom section. And so generally speaking, it means you have to go back and put a little bit more of that original dye on the end. So you get a nice dark area here. Now the other thing that I could be doing, I'm going to sprinkle the citric acid on now and start setting this. This could be white vinegar or it could be the citric acid. And if I needed more water in here, I might blend the citric acid with my plain water and then just use it to pour on. But this will start setting up pretty quickly here. The other possibility that I could do at this point is dip the top part very short distance into a light yellow if I wanted the throat of that morning glory to show just the tiniest bit of yellow. I don't think I'm going to do that with this, but we're going to let this set up, and then basically I will show you how a piece of this wool is hooked into a morning glory, and we can do more of this little streaking techniques here to kind of spread this color around. I can borrow a little bit of purple here, bring it up in here. I don't want all the red up here, but I think a little purple from down here might be nice. And this will not finish setting on top of the stove here. You can finish setting it heat-wise. It needs more heat to finish. 2 different ways. You could take this whole pan, put a lid on it, and put it in the oven at 300 degrees for like maybe 45 minutes or so to an hour. But you have to keep it tilted. And because otherwise, if I straighten this up, all this blue would go up into the top. And the other way to do this is to finish letting this clear, at least, on the top of the stove, and then microwaving it in a special steamer. This is a steamer with water underneath, and I'll gather the wool, I'll turn it such a way that the blue end does not touch the white. I'll put it in the microwave for 2 minutes at a time, and I will do that at least 3 times. I'll fork it around in between its microwave sessions, and then let it cool with the, of course it has a lid on it, it's being steamed. I will let it cool and then rinse it and hang it out to dry. So that's the gist of the dyeing, what I call dip plus casserole dyeing technique that I have used for the fine shaded, super realistic, that's what we're going for, as much realism as possible in these flowers, throated flowers, and the fine shaded technique, the kind of wool that you use for it. So thank you. Okay, so our wool has been simmering, and we're ready to take it to the final setting stage. Basically the water is clear. It still needs to set a little bit longer. So I'm going to take all of this and I'm going to put it in a microwave steamer, a vegetable steamer. Dark end I'm going to keep away from the light end. There's inch or so water in the bottom. I'm going to steam that for 2 minutes at a time, and then open it, poke it around a little bit, put the lid back on, do another 2 minutes. I'm going to do that 3 times. Then I'm going to let it cool in this, and then I'll rinse it and dry it, and it'll be ready for use. Thank you. This is Sandra Brown. Hope you enjoyed the video.